Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Mikey McNuggets coming at you on a Sunday morning. The Cleveland Cavaliers have kicked things off ahead of the NBA trade deadline. Late last night, the Cavaliers announced they traded DeAndre Hunter to the Sacramento Kings for the combination of Dennis Schroeder and Keon Ellis. So let's break down a little bit about what that means for the Cavs, whether or not Kobe Altman is done making moves, how the new players can fit into the system, and frankly, whether or not they're going to be here in a couple of days or if they could be on the move after Thursday's NBA trade deadline. The Cavs are the second team this season, or technically the third team, but the second deal this is before the NBA's trade deadline. The Trae Young was the first deal. That was between Atlanta and Washington. Now the Cavs and the Kings have become number two, and in return for DeAndre Hunter, they have Dennis Schroeder, who's now played for 11 different teams in his NBA career, and Keon Ellis, who's an unrestricted free agent after this season. The Cavs do retain his bird rights, and I think he's a player that is going to fit very well into Cleveland's system. So big picture first, then we'll kind of dive into the minutia. I think at the end of the day, the Cavaliers' championship ceiling is higher with last year's version of DeAndre Hunter, with peak DeAndre Hunter, than it necessarily is with Keon Ellis and Dennis Schroeder in the mix. However, DeAndre Hunter has not been, for the majority of this season, peak DeAndre Hunter or last year's DeAndre Hunter. And he carried a $23+ million cap hit next season. And I think that's why the Cavs were a bit scared to go into a playoffs relying on a guy who is, frankly, having the worst offensive season of his career, who's getting older, who has dealt with injuries in the past, and who carries a significant cap hit that doesn't necessarily fit into how they want to reconstruct the roster. So instead of rolling with DeAndre Hunter, they turned him into two guys who are on the undersized part of the spectrum. You know, Dennis Schroeder's 6'1", 6'2". Keon Ellis is 6'4". He has great length, and he's a defensive menace. We'll show you those highlights in a second. But they definitely got smaller, and part of getting smaller means, as of right now, they're going to have to rely a lot on Dean Wade at the 4 in the playoffs, and we've seen how that's gone in the past. That is a risk, a calculated risk Kobe Altman, Kenny Atkinson, and the Cavs have decided to take by moving off of DeAndre Hunter. But my gut tells me, and it's a strong gut feeling, that this is not the end of the Cavaliers' moves before Thursday. After the deal, there's a few financial ramifications, and I'm going to throw some of these up there. Keith Smith put it into layman's terms. The Cavs saved about $6.9 million in salary. That's $40 million in tax savings, too. They're still a second apron team. The Cavs do have the ability to extend Keon Ellis, but are limited to a 3-year, $52 million extension because of the rules. They also create a trade exception of about $6.9 million. The Kings take on about $10.1 million, of salary from the DeAndre Hunter deal. And when you look at it from real Cavs fans, he puts it in layman's terms. The Cavs are still over the second apron by $14.1 million. They could get rid of Lonzo Ball and brings them to $4.1 million over the second apron. And there are some other moves you can make in conjecture with that we'll talk about in a sec that get them under the second apron. But now they are within range of getting out of the second apron. And as we've talked about time and time before, the Cavs are the only team currently still in the second apron. And that's a decision Kobe Altman and company will have to make, whether they want to stay and or get out of the second apron. And I have one name in mind that I'll tell you guys in a little bit that I think makes a lot of sense for the current construction of this roster now, even more than it did before, who, in addition to a Lonzo Ball salary dump, would get them under the second apron and give them some more size and length on the perimeter. So we'll get to that in a sec. Let's talk about what Keon Ellis and Dennis Schroeder bring to the Cleveland Cavaliers. I'm going to play, while I talk about Keon Ellis, I'm going to play Keon Ellis defensive highlights. And guys, if this works, just watch Keon Ellis defensively. He's a menace. He is exactly what this team has been missing as a point of attack defender since they traded Lonzo for Isaac Okoro last season. He's 6'4", incredibly athletic, long, lanky, disruptive, junkyard dog-esque, to bring back a term from the J.B. Bickerstaff era. He's not afraid of anybody. He plays with the same mindset and mentality as a Jalen Tyson. He's not a great three-point shooter, but he's not a bad three-point shooter. I wonder if I can throw this stat on top of it. But if you look at Ellis's career, three-point attempts and percentage and defensive points and percentage, opposed to Isaac Okoro and Craig Porter Jr., Per 36 minutes, he's shooting better from beyond the arc than Isaac Okoro in his career on significantly more volume. But imagine Keon Ellis as your Isaac Okoro 2.0 with a little more offensive upside. He's a better ball handler than Isaac Okoro is. He's not the cutter. He's not the screener that Isaac Okoro is. And he may not even be the three-point shooter that Isaac Okoro had become at the end of his career. But for the majority of his time in the NBA, he has been a better, more efficient three-point shooter than Isaac Okoro and that same junkyard dog point of attack caliber of defender. The Cavs, and we've talked about this at length, have needed more guys who could stay in front of athletic guards on the perimeter. It's not Darius Garland's strength. It is not Donovan Mitchell's strength. Jalen Tyson has gotten pretty good at it, and he's by far their best option at the moment. It's not Lonzo Ball's strength. Craig Porter Jr. at times isn't bad at it, but he's more of an instinctual defender than a point of attack, stop you, keep you in front of you kind of defender. That's where Keon Ellis comes into play. And by the way, guys, this highlight tape was from last year. We're only halfway through. Do you remember, and can you think of how many times this season you've seen a Cavs player make some of these defensive stands that Keon Ellis has throughout this little highlight clippings? It's not a lot. Shout out to Brett Usher for putting this together, by the way. We appreciate that. So Keon Ellis has the blue-collar kind of dog, kind of alpha dog mentality from a defensive standpoint that I think pairs well alongside of Donovan, pairs well alongside of Darius, pairs well alongside of both of them if Kenny wants to go super small and play the three guards in the backcourt. He is only 6'4". He's not a small forward. He can play a little bit of the three, but he's a two. He's a combo guard. He is not a traditional small forward, but he is athletic. He is quick. He is tenacious. He's long, lanky, and he has all the intangible traits from a defensive standpoint that you want that the Cavs, honestly, have lacked and have not been particularly good at the last couple of years. His offensive game is not elite. You know, he's not an elite creator, but he does have a little bit of ball creation, a little bit of playmaking, ball handling, playmaking in his game. And we saw against Phoenix on Friday night. No Craig Porter Jr., no Darius Garland. It was just Donovan. He had 8 turnovers. Donovan as a lead solo ball handler on the court, I don't think maximizes his talents. I think he plays best alongside someone else who can create and draw the defense in so he can play a little more off ball. I'm not saying that's what Keon Ellis' strong suit is, but he is capable of that. And we're going to see one more defensive play from Keon Ellis, and then we'll talk about Dennis Schroeder. But for those who didn't know, and I retweeted this on my Twitter feed, you can go find these defensive highlights. But Keon Ellis, an absolute dog defensively, and I do think he will become very quickly one of Cleveland's favorite players to watch. He just fits the blue-collar mentality that Cleveland likes and Cleveland fans have come to love. And it's Jalen Tyson reminiscent in terms of the attitude and demeanor of which he plays. Dennis Schroeder, on the other hand, is interesting because Dennis Schroeder has been around for quite a while. He's been in the league. He's 32 and a half years old. He was a first-round pick back in 2013. The Cavs are now the 11th team he's played for in 13 years. I'm going to read you his basketball reference. Are you guys ready for this? This is his 13th year in the league. He was drafted by Atlanta, played there for 5 years. Played 2 years in OKC, 2 years in Los Angeles, 2 years in Brooklyn. Since then, Toronto, Boston, Sacramento, Detroit, Golden State, Houston, Sacramento, who I just mentioned for the second time, and now Cleveland. He has bounced around. I do not think he is a Darius Garland replacement. He is not good enough to be a Darius Garland replacement. He is good enough to be a Lonzo Ball and Craig Porter Jr. replacement, but he is not a Darius Garland replacement. He is Darius Garland insurance, though. He's a capable ball handler. He's finished in the top 10 of Sixth Man of the Year voting 3 different times in his career. You know, it goes back to 2020 was the last time, but as he shuffled around, for his career, he averages 14 points per game, 5 assists, 3 rebounds, 2 turnovers, a 2.5 to 1 assist to turnover ratio. He's shifty. He played for Kenny Atkinson in Atlanta, I believe, back in the day. Let me just double check on that, but I believe the year. Yeah, he played for Kenny Atkinson when Kenny was an assistant for those Hawks teams. He's played against Kenny internationally. Schroeder's the kind of guy that when he's on the court, he believes he's the best player on the court. It doesn't matter that he's objectively wrong most nights, if not every night. He genuinely believes he's the best player. The thing that he's most recently in the news for is he tried to fight Luka Doncic in the hallway after a game against the Lakers a couple weeks ago because Luka was apparently talking smack on the court. I say this as a compliment. the Cavs have needed an asshole on this roster, and Dennis Schroeder is 100% an asshole. I don't know him personally yet. I'm not sure if he's actually an asshole in real life, but he plays like an asshole on the court, and the Cavs genuinely need that kind of personality, I think, come playoff time. If they decide to keep Dennis Schroeder around, I do think there's a chance he gets rerouted in a secondary deal by Thursday, but we'll get to that in a second. He can play as an off-ball guard. He's not a great shooter. So when I say he plays off-ball, it's more as a cutter, a facilitator in the Lonzo Ball-esque off-ball role. He's certainly better with the ball in his hands. He likes to run pick and rolls. He likes to attack. He's a driving kick kind of guy. He's not really looking to finish when he gets into the paint. I'll say it again. He is not a Darius Garland replacement. He is not better than Darius Garland. He is not going to take Darius Garland's minutes, but he certainly makes Lonzo Ball expendable. He certainly makes Craig Porter Jr. a little more expendable, and he's a willing defender. And just like Keon Ellis, Dennis Schroeder's a guy who's going to pick you up, or at least at times in his career has picked other opposing point guards up for 94 feet and tried to make their lives as miserable as possible. The Cavs haven't had that. It's Jalen Tyson in the backcourt. Naquan Tomlin does it, but he's obviously a front court player as a forward, not in the backcourt. It was Jalen Tyson doing it, and that's about it. Max Strus did it last year, but obviously he hasn't played this season. And Donovan and Darius, that they got to reserve their energy for offense. Sam Merrill at times gives a little fake pressure. But now you have Keon Ellis and Dennis Schroeder for the time being. And we'll say for the time being now because we got to wait till Thursday to see what the final roster looks like. You have two guys that are willing to and capable of putting pressure on the opposing team's ball handlers in a way that the Cavs simply weren't able to do before. It's fine when you have one guy to get around. If it was just Jalen Tyson doing it, they would let the other ball handler on the opposing team bring the ball up court. But when you have two guys and possibly three on the court at the same time, you can really force teams into some bad decision-making, speed up their offensive rhythm, and throw them off their offensive game. And I think that's part of the appeal of bringing in a Dennis Schroeder over Malik Monk in this deal. Also, as part of the deal, by the way, the Cavs had to waive Luke Travers. They did get Emmanuel Miller from Chicago, so he'll be their new two-way player, and I think he'll fit great with the charge. He's a big 3-and-D energetic wing who certainly gives him a little toughness on the glass, but Luke Travers is no longer a member of the Cavaliers organization, and we wish him the best wherever he ends up next. So as for what's next, before we get, last thing on DeAndre Hunter. So the Cavs obviously had DeAndre. They traded for DeAndre Hunter last year. He was their big all-in kind of piece, and at times he looked like he was the perfect fit. But at the end of the day, DeAndre Hunter did not necessarily fit into the 4 role that the Cavs tried to slot him into. Part of the reason, part of the appeal they wanted DeAndre Hunter was they believed he could close games at the 4 with Evan Mobley at the 5. And for whatever reason, that pairing just never came to fruition the way Kobe Altman and Kenny Atkinson hoped it would have when they made that initial deal. And we saw this season, time and time again, the Cavs were closing with Jared Allen on the bench. Jared Allen has essentially become, for most of the season, just a role player in the fourth quarter. As of, I think 2 weeks ago, he was averaging like 2.7 minutes per fourth quarter. 11th on the team. He had fallen out of the fourth quarter rotation because Kenny wanted to close games with more size, more switching ability, more shooting, mostly on the offensive end. And DeAndre just hadn't lived up to the offensive expectations they had for him this season. He actually, I think, is going to play pretty well in Sacramento. Their offensive style is a lot more isolation, which kind of fits what DeAndre does best. So we wish him the best. DeAndre was nothing but a professional in the Cavs locker room, and I hope he has sustained and continued success with the Kings moving forward. But I do think the Cavs' ceiling before all of this was higher with peak DeAndre Hunter. I just don't know if the Cavs believe they could get a consistent peak level DeAndre Hunter. And if you couldn't get a sustained peak level DeAndre Hunter, this gives you more flexibility and the option to make more moves while also potentially ducking under the second apron. So what's next for the Cavs? What's next? Well, as I mentioned before, there's still about $14 million into the second apron. I feel very confident in saying the Cavs are doing everything in their power to get rid of Lonzo Ball in some sort of salary dump, get back a future second-round pick or something just to get him off the books, which puts them about 4.1 to be exact, $1 million over the second apron. They're also going to convert Naquan Tomlin to a full-time NBA player and give him a full-time contract, taking him off his two-way status. So that finagles the money a tiny bit, and my friend Luca over at Real Cavs Fans, make sure you give him a follow. He's much better at the cap stuff than I am. He was trying to explain to me the exact numbers, but just know, even though they're $4.1 million over the second apron after a Lonzo Ball salary dump, they still have to convert Naquan Tomlin. So there's a tiny bit of wiggle room there. Guys, the guy I'm circling, the guy that I think would make the Cavs playoff rotate. First, Let's not freak out about playoff rotations yet. Let's not. Let's wait till Thursday at 3:05 p.m. to do that. Because if we freak out about it now, we could have conversations that literally go nowhere because some of the players we're talking about and some of the rotations and the lack of an extra big or the lack of wing size now, that could all be fixed in a few days. So just save those conversations. I just want to put one name on your radar before I get to some viewer comments. Then we'll head out and have a good Sunday. But Najee Marshall of the Dallas Mavericks is a guy who signed a 3-year, $27 million contract. And I love Najee's game. I have always been a big Najee Marshall fan. According to Pro Basketball Reference, which I think is the king of basketball knowledge and basketball stats. Like, it's just the most accurate. He's listed at 6'7", 220. This season, he's averaging 14.5 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 54% from the floor, just 31% from beyond the arc. But if you look at his splits, he's gotten better and better as the months have gone on. Started the season slow and has been playing better and better and better of late. The Mavericks are still without Kyrie Irving. They still don't have a traditional point guard. They tried the D'Angelo Russell experiment. It has not worked whatsoever. They have a plethora of kind of wings and guys that overlap skill set wise with Max Christie, Cooper Flagg. Najee Marshall fits right into that category. If the Cavs can somehow flip Dennis Schroeder, who makes $14 million this year, for Najee Marshall, who makes $9 million this year, on top of Alonzo Ball's salary dump, they can get under the second apron, acquire a scoring wing in Najee Marshall, who at 6'7", 220 doesn't have elite size, but can play a little bit of small ball forward depending on the lineups you're going against. He's not a traditional four by any means, but could slide up and play in that role a little more. He's another high-energy, intense guy, not necessarily the greatest defender, and I'm not going to pretend he is, but gives you a lot more scoring punch off the bench from the front court than you currently have. And I do think he can play some small ball four at certain times. I don't think you want to close with him necessarily as your small ball four, but he can certainly give you some minutes and play a little bit in that spot. Maybe Schroeder for Marshall isn't enough straight up. Maybe the Cavs have to sweeten the pot a little bit and they don't have a ton of extra assets to do. But that is my end goal. Voila, Kobe, you did it again kind of move before the end of the deadline. If you can trade Lonzo Ball to either Utah or Brooklyn, get him off the books. You convert Naquan Tomlin to a full-time NBA contract, and now you reroute Schroeder to Dallas for Najee Marshall. I think that'd be a major win for the Cavaliers. They still would lack a little bit of creation in the backcourt. Like I said, Keon Ellis gives you a little bit of it, but the added creation you get from Najee Marshall in the front court makes up for a lot of what you miss in losing out on DeAndre Hunter, while also giving you a guy who I think can play alongside a Dean Wade at the 3 if they want to, or alongside both bigs at the 3, or alongside either big as the small ball 4. So those are kind of my big picture thoughts on the deal. I think the trade, if I had to grade it, give Cavs like a B+. Like I like the deal for the Cavs. I still think their ceiling at the end of the day is highest with DeAndre Hunter. I just don't know if you were getting at DeAndre Hunter. So if you aren't, I like the pieces they got. I think they can now reroute Dennis Schroeder into something else if they so choose. But at the end of the day, I can't shake this quote out of my mind from Chris Finch. When the Thunder beat the Timberwolves in the playoffs last year, Chris Finch was asked about the need for more shooting, right? And this is something I've harped on. I've mentioned this before, but I can't shake this out of my head. And Chris Finch, the head coach of the Timberwolves, said, well, yeah, you need shooting. Of course you need shooting. Every team needs shooting. But you need guys who can create. You need ball handlers. You need guys who can break their press and can attack their defense and get open shots for those shooters. The guys who stand in the corner and shoot don't get open unless you get dribble penetration. And you need guys who can beat Kason Wallace and Jalen Williams and SGA and Alex Caruso off the dribble, get into the paint, force the defense to collapse, and kick it out to the corners. The Thunder are a one-off. They play more physical, and they're the best defensive team in basketball. No one's going to argue that. But the Cavs need guys and need some insurance on Darius Garland if he can't get back to 100% healthy, who can create in the playoffs. Their defense actually has not been their issue in the playoffs. It's been more of their offense than their defense because they haven't been able to get enough paint touches and they haven't shot well enough in the playoffs. And if you keep Schroeder, he certainly is capable of doing that. Keon Ellis gives you another option to help you do that. And if you find a way to get Najee Marshall, like I said, a third, I'd be a big, big, big fan. All right, we got a bunch of shout out to the almost 1,000 people in here listening right now. I appreciate all you guys tuning in on a Sunday morning. And also, one last thing real quick. One last thing. Part of the reason DeAndre Hunter was expendable was the play of Jalen Tyson and Naquan Tomlin. Like, make no mistake. If Jalen Tyson hasn't developed into the player he's become this year, and Naquan Tomlin hasn't shown as much promise as he has early on this season, they don't make this trade. Kudos to Kobe for finding those two guys as an undrafted kid in Tomlin and a 20th overall pick in Jalen Tyson, for finding those guys that have played well enough and played at a high enough level that they felt comfortable being able to move on from a guy that they just pushed all their chips on the table for at this time last year. DeAndre, wish you the best of luck. Jalen, Naquan, more responsibilities coming your way. We'll see what Kobe Altman has up the sleeve before Thursday's 3 p.m. deadline. All right, let's get to some comments real quick. See if we got anything here. Jimmy Johnson says he loves the trade. Gracie Barrett, 3 thumbs up. Idea Main says big guard lineup coming now. The trade DG for wing. I don't know what DG's trade value is, guys. He's hurt. Like, he's hurt. We could make up fake deals, but he's hurt. I don't know what you want to do. They're not getting anything back for Darius Garland that's going to make you better right now. Jimmy Vox Johnson said, we're getting Giannis now. Technically, guys, Jared Allen and DG for Giannis works money-wise now. It gets him under the second apron. Is that enough for Giannis? I doubt it, but technically, it works. Let's see. RB Boyer says, I'm actually hyped for Ellis. Schroeder's a solid vet to have, but I like this trade. Wish Dre worked out, but he's been too inconsistent. Numna says, does anyone think Darius for MPJ makes more sense now? I don't think they would trade Darius, right? I don't think the value's there for Darius. The injury, the uncertainty, the toe, I have no idea. I have no idea what his trade value is. There have been a lot of reports out there that they're actively shopping Darius Garland, and there's been no takers. I don't know how valid those reports are, but I don't think the return for Darius Garland right now is nearly as high as some people would think. J47 said Dennis Schroeder's been traded 8 times. It's true. He's been on 11 teams in 13 years now. 11 teams. It says something. Just worth keeping an eye on. Drama City says, good trade. Mike Dibble says, good trade. I feel like there's more coming. Rod Nose says you need a little crazy. Idea Main says we need a Draymond now. Joe Kabak says a guard-heavy league. JB On It says Ellis is decent for real. Slim Hazard said, hadn't ever heard that Schroeder's an asshole. Yeah, Cavs, you an asshole. He literally he went outside the locker room. He got suspended. He literally got suspended for 3 games because after a game against the Lakers a couple weeks ago, Luka apparently said he should have took the Lakers extension. He turned down an $84 million extension in LA, bet on himself, and then ended up signing like a 1-year, $6 million deal the next year. Like, he lost out on a ton of money, and apparently Luka was talking some smack and said that. So after the game, according to reports, and he was suspended for this, so I'm going to believe said reports, Schroeder tried to go to the Lakers locker room and fight Luka Doncic. Like, literally tried to go fight him and had to be stopped, and they had to be separated. But he literally went outside the Lakers locker room and tried to fight him. So there we go. Day'Ron Sharpe now. The way Day'Ron's been playing, man, his value's through the roof. I love Day'Ron Sharpe. I think he'd be a perfect fit. If the Cavs could find a way to get Day'Ron Sharpe, I would be all in favor. I think it'd be a perfect third big behind Allen and Mobley. But I don't know what they have left to trade. So I can't imagine. Hey, listen, if Kobe could get him, I'm all in. Be a great deal. Would happily welcome a Day'Ron Sharpe, but I'm just not quite sure how it works. Like, Lonzo for Sharpe, like, it's possible. Yeah, the money works, but why would Brooklyn do that? Like, why would Brooklyn do that? Let's see. What else we got? We still need another big man. I agree. That's why I kind of like Najee Marshall. It's the best of the in-between. I still love Bobby Portis. If Giannis gets traded and they decide to blow it up, then I'm all for kind of finding a way to get Bobby Portis in here, but I'm just not sure that's realistic. There was apparently reports that Milwaukee, prior to this latest Giannis rumor mill, essentially had called Cleveland about a Portis and Kuzma for DeAndre Hunter swap, but I'm not sure how valid that was. I mentioned the Slim Hazard said Najee for who? I mentioned Schroeder as the guy. Just literally flipped Schroeder to Dallas. They need a point guard. And let's see. Yeah, hit that J-Bone. Hit that like button. I appreciate you guys. Everyone who tuned in. And I think that's it. And Ian, yeah, last one. Last one I'm going to read, then I'll get out of here. The NBA in real life's not like the 2K trade finder. Unfortunately, I wish it was that easy. I just don't think there's value for Darius Garland that would make the Cavs feel comfortable trading an all-star caliber point guard. If he's 100% healthy and teams knew he was 100% healthy, yeah, I think there would be legitimate market and legitimate value for Darius Garland. But he hasn't been healthy in a long time. He's owed $100 million over the next 2+ years. I don't know what the market is for an undersized, injury-prone point guard who's right now not healthy and hasn't shown the propensity to be able to stay healthy with that kind of contract. I don't know. All right, that's all we got all the time we have this morning. Sorry. Didn't expect to do an impromptu Sunday show, but when the Cavs make moves, we got to do what we got to do. I give it a B+. Let me know what you guys think. Grade the trade in the comments. We'll talk more about this on Monday. We'll get Jason's thoughts. We'll get Jay's thoughts. We'll get Bo's thoughts. We'll get G's thoughts. We'll get all their thoughts on a Monday edition of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. That's coming at you at 11 a.m. tomorrow, just like normal. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. As always, support the Cleveland Charge. Support the Cleveland Monsters. Head over to FanDuel if you have a winning FanDuel bet. Make sure you send it in so we can feature it on the show. We appreciate you guys. I give it a B+. Let me know what you think. And we will see you tomorrow on UCSS. Go Cavs. Peace.